Hello, my brothers and sisters in gaming. Welcome back to the channel. As always, I am Jonathan, your host here at QuickBird Gaming, and I thank you for tuning in for another episode of QuickBird News. I really do appreciate it. On this week's episode, we are covering all the gaming news that's fit to print, or rather talk about, from June 30th to the 5th of July, so from Sunday to Saturday of this last week here. And since I got a couple of big stories to talk about, I better get started. Okay, right out of the gate, I got to talk about what the hell's going on over at Xbox and Microsoft right now. And I'll start with this article from Eurogamer, which was published on Friday, July 4th. Job losses, studio closures, canceled games. What we know about Xbox's devastating wave of layoffs. Now, this article starts off by saying that across its company, Microsoft had laid off about 9,000 people, announced on Wednesday. Those 9,000 were not strictly speaking in Xbox. They were across all divisions of Microsoft, but you know it's going to hit the gaming divisions hard, and apparently it has. And the next couple of paragraphs talk about other layoffs this year and said that this makes 4 rounds in under 2 years for Microsoft. And as expected, there were some pretty significant losses here. First up, they say Rare, the studio which is best known for GoldenEye and Sea of Thieves, their fantasy adventure Everwild, announced 6 years ago and mostly kept quiet since, has reportedly been canceled, and Greg Mayles, who has been at the company for 35 years, announced his departure. The reboot of Perfect Dark, developed by the studio The Initiative, has been canceled as part of the latest round of cuts. It was first announced in December of 2020 and has been in development at The Initiative since. Because of some setbacks, Crystal Dynamics was brought in to assist, but the project will never see the light of day. And according to the article, Joanna Dark actor Alex Wilton Reagan implored fans to use voices to save Perfect Dark after the game was canceled this week. What's left unsaid here is that the studio The Initiative, with Perfect Dark reboot being its first game, is also shuttered. It is reportedly gone, and employees, the entire studio has been laid off by Microsoft. We'll come back to the voice actress's request here in a minute. Romero Games, the small Irish development studio set up by veteran game devs John and Brenda Romero, has had its funding pulled by Microsoft, ending development of an all-new shooter. Unconfirmed reports suggest the entire development team has been laid off. We'll come back to that as well. Forza Motorsport is no more, claims a former Turn 10 employee. The employee said that Turn 10 Studios has shuttered the Forza Motorsport space and the team is no more. Per Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, almost 50% of Turn 10 staff has been laid off. And finally, Chris Lynn, the senior producer at ZeniMax Online Studios, essentially Bethesda's parent company, ZeniMax, which was bought by Microsoft, so Bethesda Studios we're thinking of here, has confirmed the cancellation of an unannounced MMO codenamed Blackbird. And apparently, ZeniMax Online Studio president Matt Furore, hopefully I pronounced that right, has also announced his intention to step down. So you can see there are some very significant cuts going on over here at Xbox. And while I think this is unfortunate, I don't think it's all that unexpected. And I don't think this is going to be the end of it. We've already seen a lot of layoffs that this article's mentioned. You know, they talk about over at Epic, at Unity, PlayStation, Riot, and even a previous one at Xbox, and those are just the big ones. We've had a lot of other small studios that have also imploded or had layoffs affect them. And I think that right now there's just so little margin for error in the AAA game space that this is gonna become the norm. Now, this is just me talking, my opinion, and kind of my sussing out how I'm observing this industry. And feel free to tell me if you disagree. I think there's actually a finite amount of money available in this space, and people will say, well, that can't be the case because video games are making more and more money year over year than they ever were before. You know, each year seems to set new profits and new revenues. And while I agree with that, I think that fixed percentage of this revenue is coming from mobile apps, microtransactions, gotcha games, and that is a sizable chunk of that revenue across the board. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I've seen them reported before, and it's upwards of 50% or more of all gaming revenue is coming from that type of application. So you shrink it down to 50% of that revenue. And I think that there's going to be only a part of that revenue is even up for grabs. Everybody that buys the people that buy, even though they're not technically gotcha games or microtransactions, people that buy the new EA Sports soccer game or football game, or that buy the new Call of Duty every year, those are kind of fixed purchases that people are going to continue to buy year over year. And the amount of actual revenue that's up for grabs in a given year, I think is a relatively small percentage of the overall revenue. And this is a long-winded way of me saying that I think that like I said, the margin of error for these companies for things like AAA single-player games is less than it ever has been, because it not only do you have to make sure that your game makes money, when you can't keep spending years and years and tens or hundreds of millions of dollars to get it out. Down here we said that Everwild was announced 6 years ago, and we don't have, it's not in a beta form, it's not in a ready form to be play tested. Well, that's 6 years of a financial trail that they've sunk into this. Perfect Dark was first announced in December of 2020, which meant they were probably working on it before then. So 5 years, and even though they had a recent gameplay trailer, I think it was a gameplay trailer, they're still not ready to play. These games go and go and go, and they spend all this money and they don't get there. And Microsoft, from their angle, and Xbox Studios have to look at this and say, how long do we keep paying them before we get a working product, and will we ever make our money back, or do we cut our losses now? And I think that's what they're saying. So while I said, I think this is unfortunate, I just don't think there's a lot of leeway for the companies. Now, having said that, I think it's going to be unfortunate for us on the receiving end, the end user end of this, because what it's going to mean is we're going to get less innovative and more derivative products from here on out. Companies are going to be fearful of innovating and taking chances. Let me rephrase that. Big companies are going to be fearful of this because they are getting to the point where they can't afford to lose the money. They can't afford to sink $100 million into a game and have it turn out like Mindseye. I don't know how much Mindseye cost, but considering when I looked at it the other week and it had 40 active players, there ain't no way that made its money back. There's a lot of investors left holding the bag, and nobody wants to be in that boat from a financial perspective. So what are they going to do? They're going to continue to do things like give us another EA football, NCAA college football game. They're going to give us another Call of Duty. We already got Call of Duty 7. And how many times do we have to iterate Call of Duty? Well, we're going to get it again because that's what we're going to get. Nintendo, even though they've got a fairly captive audience, they're going to keep putting out Mario Kart because they know that's what sells. They're going to keep putting out Pokemon games because they know that's what sells. There's no incentive for these companies to innovate, and we're going to feel it. Innovation is going to have to come from the smaller studios, the companies that are making things like Clair Obscur. And that's just the way it's going to be. So I actually don't expect this to be the last round of layoffs that we see from Microsoft. I bet there is another round and more cancellations within 12 months. That's just my gut feeling. And I don't think it's much of a sucker. People might say it's a sucker bet to take that bet. I don't think it's that big of an out there prediction. So, unfortunately, this is just the world we live in now in the AAA gaming space. You're going to have to not only get a game to market, you have to get it out there timely, and it has to be good enough to make a profit. Okay, coming back to one of the items I mentioned just a moment ago is this Games Radar article from Saturday, July 5th. Perfect Dark, Joanna Dark actor calls for Hi-Fi Rush-style revival after Microsoft cancels the reboot, as Starfield and Deus Ex star reveals his scrapped role will cost him thousands of dollars. The second half of that article isn't pertinent to my point here, as you can come all the way down, and you see that Elias Tufexis, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, who voiced Adam Jensen in Deus Ex Human Revolution and its sequel Mankind Divided, as well as Sam Coe in Starfield. He was going to have a role in Joanna Dark, or in Perfect Dark, and this cancellation has cost him quite a bit of work, which is a common lament for the actors in these games. But back to the point, The voice actor for Joanna Dark, Alex Wilton Reagan, tweeted a message following the game's cancellation. Agent Dark doesn't give up, and neither should you. It's been an honor to work with the talents at the initiative. My heart hurts for everyone affected today, but like Joanna, we will rise again. After a fan suggested another publisher pick up the game, developer, like Hi-Fi Rush developer Tango Gameworks, was picked up by Krafton. Wilton Reagan responds, a lot of people have been reaching out and floating this idea on my timeline, my phone, my DMs, and I'm just going to say it. I hope we live in a nice world. Urging fans to speak up if you want to see Perfect Dark survive. And there's the tweet exchange that led up to that. I'm a little skeptical of this. I wish Wilton Reagan and all the other people who worked on this game well, and I hope if it works out for them, that would be great. However, the cynic in me says this is a little different from the Hi-Fi Rush scenario. For one, Tango Gameworks had already finished Hi-Fi Rush and put it out. Even though it was not a huge commercial success, it was a critical success. It's got a cult following. And the studio, I believe, was still largely intact when Krafton took them under their wing from Microsoft. So that makes a little bit of a difference. You have a team that has produced a proven product, and somebody else is just willing to shepherd them. With the initiative and Perfect Dark, you have a studio that's been working on a game for 5 or more years and has not produced anything to show for it, and I believe they've already been laid off and I think kind of been scattered to the winds. I don't know if there's anything left here to salvage. I don't know if somebody wants to take a chance on an unproven studio that has yet to produce a game. So I think the situation is a little different. I don't know that there's going to be some strong outpouring for a Perfect Dark remake from the general gaming community. This is not Bloodborne. There haven't been people clamoring for this, for a remaster of this for a long time. So I don't know that their odds are that good, but I wish them all the best. For the second item I said we'd revisit, I point to this article from Video Game Chronicle, also published on Saturday, 5 July. Romero Games now completely closed following Microsoft cuts, it's claimed. Now, let's see. Romero Games, the Ireland-based studio founded by celebrated designers John and Brenda Romero, has now completely closed. It is claimed on Wednesday, when the rest of these cuts were announced by Xbox. The studio confirmed it had lost funding for its unannounced shooter project after an unnamed publisher, later named as Microsoft, pulled its publishing agreement. It later emerged that employees had lost their jobs after they posted messages on LinkedIn. Now, one employee has claimed the studio has been closed entirely, with all 100 of its staff members losing their jobs. Speaking to the Journal, the anonymous staff member described the situation as a big shock. Everyone is out of a job, they said. We had meetings with the publisher the day before this happened. There was no mention of it. It seemed so far away for us. The title was pretty well developed at the time. Romero Games was working on a first-person shooter made in Unreal Engine 5. According to the anonymous employee, there was a chance another publisher could swoop in and save the project and Romero Games, but as of now, its operations have ended. So, yet again, another casualty, another victim of the mass cuts here. And I think that this is especially significant because of John Romero's pedigree and his history. He worked on some of the contribution this man made to the first-person shooter genre as a whole, considering the work he did on the original Wolfenstein 3D, on Doom, on Quake, the games that kind of set the standard for FPSs 30 years ago. And even a legend in the industry can still find himself on the receiving end of a cut. Like I said at the end of the clip a moment ago, this is just the world we live in. Produce or die is kind of how it's what it's coming down to. Now, they say the game was pretty well along at the time, but that's that could mean any number of things. And how long had they been working on it, and how much money had gone into it? I really doubt that if Microsoft thought that they had a viable path forward to a financially profitable product, that they would have given it the axe. Clearly, they didn't think they did. So, like I said, produce or die. That is the mantra for the video game industry now, kind of like it or not. Okay, I'm going to stop talking about Microsoft and Xbox for a little bit. We're going to move on to some other stuff. We'll pivot to this story over on DualShockers, which was published on Thursday, July. And the article reads, Anthem will go offline early next year. It's going to shut down in January of 2026. The game's had a good long run, despite, well, everything. It's had a long run, I'll give it that. After careful consideration, EA's official update post reads, we'll be sunsetting Anthem on January 12th, 2026. As of today, you can no longer purchase in-game premium currency, but you can use your remaining balance. So now between now and January 12th, the game will be stuck in one final round of limbo. Quite honestly, I wasn't even aware that Anthem was still online, and that sentiment seems fairly reflective. When you go out there into discussion forums on Reddit or Steam or whatever, many people are saying Anthem is still a thing. You know, the game debuted in 2019. It was BioShock's attempt at a live service, team shooter. Never really gained traction. It wasn't what BioWare was known for in the first place. A lot of people said EA leaned on them to produce this, and this is why, kind of started BioWare's downfall in real time, culminating what happened with Dragon Age Veilguard. But that's all kind of immaterial here. So Anthem is going to go offline, and the people who have purchased it and put their spending into it are now going to kind of be left without anything to show for it, which is interesting. Given our next story, EA seems to be getting out in front of what might be happening in the EU. So let's go to that story. And that article in question is this one from Games Rant, which was published on Thursday, 3 July. Stop Killing Games petition is blowing up. Now, if you are unfamiliar with the Stop Killing Games petition, I really urge you to go out there and read a little bit about it. It was started by a gentleman. Let me scroll down here. Let's see, Ross Scott. Yeah, that's his name. He founded this initiative after the shutdown of Ubisoft's The Crew in April of last year, of 2024, when Ubisoft essentially said, we're shutting down this game, it's a live service game, and because of the servers that are online, nobody else, you will no longer be able to play this game. We're taking it offline. And many people were rightfully upset that they had purchased the game and they would no longer be able to play it. Scott saw this, and he put together this petition for the EU and for the UK to essentially have the European Union's legislative body look into passing law to tell video game companies that they could not sunset live service games without a plan for when they shut them down. I think here in the U.S. we're already a victim of established case law, and probably we're up a creek. But if you're in the EU especially, or in the UK, you should at least check this out and see if it's something you want to support. I might have personal strong feelings about this, because I am almost always, 99% of the time, going to be on the side of the gamer and the consumer in this process. And I don't like the fact that companies will do this, and they try to put it behind the ethics of saying, well, you're paying for a license, you're not paying for the game. And I understand that, but I don't agree with it. And I don't think they should be able to arbitrarily yank this stuff out of your hands when they decide they don't want to support it anymore. Especially, this really gets me when you start talking about single-player games that seem to require an online connection to play because they need to be connected to a server to verify DRM and such. If they're going to sunset the game, they need to. Their whole business plan can be you no longer have to connect online to play it. It should be that simple, especially for physical media. If you got a physical copy of the game and they're just not going to support it anymore, it's not that hard. Live service games, multiplayer games are a little more complicated, but then they basically just need to say, in my opinion, companies just need to say, well, we are not going to support it, so we open it up to allow people to do what they want. You think about a game like WoW, World of Warcraft. There are privately run servers out there, and I don't know if they're done with Blizzard's blessings or not, but you can't stand there and tell me that if a dedicated fan base to a community wants to preserve a game, they will, if they're given the opportunity and they're not harassed legally by the company. And I think that's really the upshot of what the Stop Killing Games petition wants. They want people to be able to continue to play the games. Now, some people will argue that that's not what's really in the petition. The legal sense of it is, what's written is not what I just described. And like I said, that gets into the legalese. That's why it has to go before the Commission, the European Union's consumer protection body, to work all that out, to hammer out those fine details. But you can't do anything until you get it in front of them, which is the whole point of the petition. Now, another aspect to this is some YouTubers have been extremely critical of this effort and have tried to denigrate it, in my opinion. If you've been following this, you probably know of whom I'm speaking. I'm not going to waste my time arguing with them or about them. I actually am going to link a video in the bar down here from Bellular News that has a really good summary of what is going on with this whole petition and this whole drive, if you want more details. But I very much encourage you, especially if you're in the EU and this is something that you can support through the sign-up mechanism, at least check it out and see if you would like to do so. For us over here in the States, it's kind of a sideshow, and we're just kind of watch and see what happens. But you have my moral support for whatever that's worth. I hope that this goes through and builds better protection in for the gamer, for the consumer. Because in my opinion, that's really who matters here. Next up is this article from Insider Gaming, published on Thursday, July 3rd. And the headline reads, Mindseye will be relaunched as CEO blames saboteurs.
Oh shit, here we go again.
It has been suggested by Build a Rocket Boy CEO Leslie Benzies that Mindseye, the shamed failure of a game that was released last month, will be relaunched as reviews continue to plummet. It has also been claimed by BARB employees that the CEO once again blamed saboteurs for the demise of Mindseye, echoing something his co-CEO said several weeks ago. And this comes down to statements obtained by IGN that read as follows. BARB sources told IGN that Benzies finally addressed staff following the release of Mindseye in a brief video call yesterday, July 2nd. According to two people present who asked not to be named in order to protect their careers, it's a big brain move, Benzies insisted BARB would bounce back and relaunch Mindseye, blaming the studio and the game's struggles on the internal and external saboteurs, among other things. And this is after his co-CEO had suggested that negative reviews and previews of the game were being paid for by, as they suggested, although they didn't say it outright, by Rockstar. I used the analogy before, I'll repeat it here because it matches. As Sigmund Freud said, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, and maybe your game just sucked. And frankly, if you go read the Steam review page, you can see that a lot of people thought it sucked. They were not happy with it. 37% positive reviews for a mostly negative rating out of thousands of reviews for the game. It's still clocking in at, 30 to 70 players a day. And that's it. It was not a good game. It was not well received. I don't think blaming saboteurs or blaming outside sources is going to garner any sympathy for this game. It's just going to make the studio and the executives look kind of pathetic. I mean, could it have a redemption arc a la No Man's Sky? Anything's possible. But statistically, this will be the end of Build a Rocket Boy Studios, because people have already reported that they are braced for layoffs. And if that happens, the fat lady has sung. And the hits just keep on coming as I shift over to this PC Games In article that was published on Thursday, July 3rd. Ready or Not Dev makes statement on controversial changes as Steam reviews sink. The developer Void Interactive has issued a statement to counter misinformation about changes made in the realistic FPS game. Now, the upshot of this article and this whole controversy is that the game Ready or Not, it's a co-op shooter where the players take on the roles of SWAT team members, and they're out on missions, and they're doing some of the really grittiest, dirtiest police work and investigations, and the whole thing is full of violence. In fact, you can dismember people by shooting them before or after they're dead. There's nudity. It's just a very bleak, dark, grim look at that side of the world. And the player base, which to this point the game has only been available on PC. The player base seems to have embraced it. Now, Void Interactive is prepping the game to move it to console as well and enable crossplay and things like that. And in order to do that, they've had to tone down some of the more egregious elements in the game in order to get it past the console's, I guess, their content moderation policies. And that means they've had to change some things, and the PC player base has not taken it well. Okay, so let's see. This is what they talk about in the first part of the article, what I just said. In order to secure its release on console, they have had to make changes. Previously, Void Interactive published a statement confirming certain visual elements of Ready or Not would be modified and censored in order to align with the certification policies set by first-party console partners. In order to avoid technical issues, these changes would be made to the game's existing PC version. And people have actually, like I said, lost their minds. Okay, thank you for the ad. PC Games In. One mission, for example, charges players with locating a police informant who's been tortured. In the original edition of the game, the character is naked and large quantities of his blood are pooled on the floor around him. In the new version, the character has a pair of underpants and some blood has been removed. Another level involves collecting evidence from a suspect's bedside drawer. When highlighting the evidence in the original version, an in-game pop-up describes it as containing prohibited images of minors. Now it's a more generic photographic evidence. Boy, they really want me to buy this Intel core, don't they? Okay, Void Interactive has confirmed what we reflected in the PC's version 2 to facilitate crossplay, limit the possibility of bugs. And like I said, people have lost their minds about this, and now they come down here and Void tries to say that we believe in creative freedom, the right to build experiences, we operate in a global ecosystem, and we've only made the changes where required and only to the letter of the regulations, and blah, 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 blah. And basically, their statement says, yeah, we did it, and we had to make the changes, and what are you going to do about it? Kind of thing. It's we had to, and there's no way around it. The PC player base has not responded to that very well, like the article alluded to. The game had a very positive rating of 83% with almost 200,000 reviews overall, but currently 24% of 14,000 reviews in the last 30 days. And you can really see it on the graph. That tells you everything you need to know if you're looking at this game and how the player base is responding to the developer's actions. I mean, you can disagree with it, but it doesn't change it. It is what it is. And this first most helpful review, which has about almost 11,000 people clicking on it as helpful, says it all. Potential customers beware. Do not buy this game. Do not support a company like Void. The game wasn't perfect initially, but now they're choosing to censor it. They made their money from you, the PC players on Steam, and out of greed, they're appeasing console market regulators by censoring the game to meet the demands. Their own community manager confirmed on Steam that no matter how the PC community feels, it's a done deal. There will be no option to keep the original version or avoid the forced update. So, to me, this is a teachable moment in the sense for both sides. On the one hand, if you are a gamer, never assume that the company is on your side. And they can turn on you at any minute. And they can do things that you won't like to the game you play, and that's just the way it is. And that's the risk you assume by buying into this ecosystem. There's no way around it. So that's something to be reminded of, and to not invest all your eggs in one basket. In other words, don't assume any one game will be the way it is forever and you'll be able to enjoy it that way forever. Keep diversifying your interests and keep looking around. It's a teachable moment for the developers as well, because I really think that their attitude has been, well, we're going to make the change and people will stick around. I'm not sure that's true. Now, if you go look at the Steam database numbers, they've actually experienced an uptick in the last week, and I wonder how many people are going in there because they want to get the change. They want to get their plays in before the game changes. I wonder if the controversy has brought new people over who are enjoying the game. There's unfortunately no way to tell from those numbers, although I should have just pulled the chart up. They did experience an uptick in players in the last week. The issue here, though, to me, is that for Void Interactive, yes, they're perfectly free to do this with their game. However, it feels like they're ignoring the fact that the PC players, the ones who had their back when they released this gritty game that wouldn't pass on consoles, and the people who embraced it and loved it, they are now turning their backs on them. At least that's the perception from the PC gamer crowd. And the thing with your reputation, and this applies to a person or a company, is that you can spend long time building it, years maybe, and you can shred it in a matter of seconds. Do I think this is going to cause the end of the world for Ready or Not? No. Do I think a lot of people will be willing to give a Void interactive game a try in the future if they were a fan of this game? The answer was also no. And I think that, like this guy kind of said, where is it? Well, he didn't say it in short-term game. He said to chase console sales, they're showing apathy and throwing their Steam users under the bus. To me, this is the idea that they are willing to shed some of their longtime users for a short-term game with the console market. But loyalty is a two-way street. And I think this is ultimately going to be worse. They're going to be worse off for doing this. But if that happens and they join the list of game companies that get shuttered, in this case they have nobody to blame but themselves. Next, I just want to highlight this article from Ars Technica from Wednesday, July 2nd. What's wrong with AAA games? The development of the next Battlefield has answers. EA insiders describe stress and setbacks in a project that's too big to fail. Now, this is actually an excellent article. I'm going to link it below and really recommend you check it out. I could make an entire video just covering this article and what's apparently going on inside DICE and inside EA for the next Battlefield game, which is supposed to release in about 9 or 10 months, and the development issues that have cropped up during it. And this article is very in-depth, so it covers a lot of ground. I don't want to get all the way into it, but basically it says, today, publisher EA is in full production on the next Battlefield title, but sources close to the project say it has faced culture clashes, ballooning budgets, and major disruptions that have left many team members fearful that parts of the game will not be finished to players' satisfaction in time for launch during EA's fiscal year. That kind of just sums up everything wrong with AAA games. Like the title said, the fact of the matter is this is lining up potentially. This is one account. We don't have anything official yet, but this is lining up to potentially be a crash of an immense magnitude for EA. And I'll say right now, I will put it on video right now, that if this game fails, DICE as a studio is finished. They will close that studio down and kick those guys out faster than you know what. If this launches as bad or worse than Battlefield 2042, that's the end. That's the end of the franchise. That's the end of the studio. They have to get this right. What did I say earlier? Produce or die. And that's where this studio is right now. And it just sounds like it's not going well. So rather than me diving all the way into this, I really recommend you read this article. And like I said, it's a very, very good one. So check that out and check out the description, the link down in the description. All right, after all my griping, I'm going to finish up with something positive. So this article from Game Rant from Friday, July 4th. New Final Fantasy IX development is fueling remake rumors. It says, since June 30th, Square Enix has been posting new pieces of FF9 artwork on social media in observance of the game's upcoming 25th anniversary, sparking speculation among fans that a remake announcement is imminent. The art pieces in question featured location and characters from Final Fantasy IX, including the Ifa Tree and Tantalus' theater stage. The 25th anniversary will fall on Monday, July 7th, so as of the time of this video being posted, that is tomorrow. To coincide with the date, it was released for the original PlayStation console in Japan in 2000, subsequently released in North America 4 months later on November 14th. Since then, modernized ports of Final Fantasy IX have emerged on consoles like PS4 and Switch, and also on Steam on PC. So, Whether or not a remake is officially revealed, that has not stopped fans from expressing their hopes for one after Square Enix's latest social media post. And here are the pictures. This is the crew on the stage, and then Kuja, I think that's his name, standing in front of the IFA tree, and then the crew also looking at the IFA tree. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm in the middle of actually playing Final Fantasy IX for the first time and really enjoying it. And my overall Final Fantasy experience at this point has been 10 and 13, which were different games, and 9 is also very different. So it is it's like I said, substantially different, but I'm actually quite enjoying some of the abilities and the skill system, the way that you have to build the character's skills based on wearing different sets of armor and stuff, and eventually they will learn those skills. And balancing your party, you have up to 8, you get to a point where you can have there 8 characters and 4 of them in your party at a time, all of whom are different and have little different, add a little something different to it. It's quite a lot of fun. So, and then the original cover down there for it. I actually am enjoying it a lot. So the idea of a remake, to me, it's a good thing. And I don't even know if I want them to go full Final Fantasy VII with the remake. A remaster, cleaning up some of the quality of life would be great. But this to me is a positive example of fandom, of people who love a game and they love a franchise so much that they're eager, they take the idea that there's some artwork being posted as the possibility of a remake, and they run with it, and they're excited and happy about it. We might get disappointed on Monday when the 7th rolls through. We may or may not get an announcement. Either way, I'm going to continue to play the game I have in my hands now, and I'm going to continue to enjoy it. And I hope all fans of Final Fantasy who like this game do continue to enjoy it, whether we get a remake or not. But it's nice to have something to talk about, and it's nice that people are responding positively, like, we love this and give us more. And to me, that's some of the best elements of gamers and their fandoms. Whew. Okay, I think I have gone on long enough. I've run way long tonight, and it is late, and I'm tired, and I babbled a lot. Even my wife's like, you sure do have a lot to say over there. And she's right, I often do. Anyway, thank you for joining me for another episode of QuickBird News. I hope you found some of this information informative, and it clued you in on some things going on that you might not have heard about before. As always, if you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing to the channel and let me know what you'd like to see from me in the future. Drop a like on the video, leave a comment, and let me know what you thought about one of the stories I covered. I appreciate all that engagement, and it helps me out a lot. In the meantime, it is late. Like I said, it is off to bed for me. So I'm going to call this I'm going to bring this to a halt, call it quits for tonight, and I'll be back soon with a new video. In fact, I am working on my How Does It Play Today video for Final Fantasy IX, my series where I look back on games celebrating their 25th anniversary. See, I told you I was tired. Suffering, huh? Celebrating their 25th anniversary, and Final Fantasy IX was on my list, and I've been playing through it, and I'm about ready to finish that video and post it. Anyway, now I'm just babbling, so I am going to get off of here. Thank you all for tuning in again. You all go out there, live your best lives, and you all stay gaming.